This one has. This one has. I think two's fine.
Two's fine. Yeah.
Let's turn this on. First one will be you. Yes.
I just sent you the.
Oh, you did? Okay, thank you. How about it now? Thank you.
Everyone. What's the small?
All right. Another time. Welcome to Halve's Day 2. Teams will be presenting their progress updates and their plans for the rest of the semester in about 15 minutes. 5 minutes for questions. We are streaming, so everyone on the stream. And for everyone who is in the room, the students presenting, the expectation is you are here for the whole session. So please stick around and give your fellow classmates your attention. With that, MonoMon MR, you're up.
Good morning, we're Team MonoMon MR, and our project is Mixed Reality Deck Down. Our instructor is Dave, and my name is Felicia. I'm the producer and UX UI designer.
My name is Yushi, and I'm in charge of rigging and animation.
My name is Chloe. I'm in charge of art direction and 3D art.
My name is Patrick. I'm the software engineer.
I'm Arthur. I'm the game designer, gameplay programmer on the team.
I'm Snow. I'm the VFX and technical artist.
For a short overview, our deliverable is a 2-player physical combat demo by using the latest mixed reality technology, and we're currently developing the experience in a room roughly around 20 by 20 feet, and it contains 2 to 4 pieces of furniture. And now I'll hand the microphone to Chloe.
Thank you, Felicia. So for the general pitch of our experience, we have 3 monsters of following type: water, fire, and grass. And us, players, are chosen entities with magical watch device, which allow monsters to channel their spiritual powers to us. Then you will choose your own monster to duel and collect souls from one another. To achieve this, we have 3 key design pillars: player versus player interaction, virtual interaction, and physical interaction. Now we will watch a short gameplay demo of what we have so far. As you can see, player 1 and 2 create and join the room. Then you'll see all these shared assets in the mixed reality space. Then they both tap the watches onto the magical scroll, and it slowly floats, unwraps, and then shows a drawing of our 3 monsters. Then it drops our 3 monsters in a Hanafuda card form. You choose a monster, tap the card onto the watch, and now you have the spiritual power of the monster. Then you battle. When the player makes a successful hit to the opponent will drop these things called souls. Then you'll send your monster to collect the soul drops, and that's how you win. Let's talk about one of our magical experience, our first encounter with our monsters. As we all saw, we have an unwrapping scroll as a start button. This not only shows the unfolding of our narrative, but also helps the players to dive into the world of fantasy very quick. We also have these 3 monsters in Hanafuda card form prior to syncing. After you choose your monster, you'll meet one of our following 3 monsters. From the left, Chochi, Nuki, and Cappy. As you can also see from our environment assets, we have a very bold and round shape languages with some outlines. Such guide for aesthetic directly derived from the traditional Japanese card game called Hanafuda. the design decision was made not only to save time on 3D art pipeline, but also to make it easier to read for players in the mixed reality room setting. Now we'll have Yushi to talk about another special feature of our game, watches.
Thank you, Chloe. So we are using a physical watch armature as our key medium for our player to physical interaction, which is this. And essentially the fantasy behind this watch is that it is used as an instrument to channel the monster's power to the player. And the reality behind this watch is that it is used as a physical anchor for our user interface where players can see the number of souls they've collected, their HP, and their mana. So essentially, we have this watch that allows us to communicate with the monster, but why is this communication necessary? This brings us to the question of the relationship between the player and the monster. And the fantasy behind this interaction is that the player and the monster have a symbiotic relationship. Essentially, the player gets challenged to a duel and needs to obtain power to win, and the monster wants to get stronger and needs to obtain souls in order to do so. So in terms of gameplay, the player will be able to use the monster cards to select which power they wish to wield by tapping and feeding the card to their watch. And then, in turn, the selected monster will transfer its power to the player, which will allow them to cast spells. Then, the player in return will feed the monster souls throughout the duel. And essentially, these souls are an energy resource for our monsters to get stronger, and monsters have a higher chance of obtaining souls if they help someone in a duel. So to explain how the role of souls works in gameplay, we will reference a player 1 and a player 2. So let's say player 1 casts a spell directed towards player 2. If player 2 gets hit by the spell, then souls will be released from their body and scattered randomly throughout the duel space. Then player 1 will be able to send their monster to feed on the souls that player 2 just released. As you can see, it's mutually beneficial for the monster and the player to work together to win the duel. So that's a bit about how fantasy is integrated into our gameplay, and now Arthur will talk about game design.
Thank you, Yushi. So let's talk about game design. What happened to the original card game pitch that we had? What happened to the turn-based system? Essentially what happened was that throughout the playtest, throughout the development, we realized that our players a lot of times focus a lot more on the physicality of the game, and yet taking turns drawing cards, planning your phases sometimes really breaks the game flow and turns the player's attention away from the connection between you and the monster. So we have built a new system that we still inherit the mana system from card games, but they grow as the time goes, and more of all is that you get to make these choices to convert your valid hits with attacks into a win condition. Essentially, is that when you send out your monster, you expose them in danger, and what we'll need to do is use mana on attacks and blocks to really trigger more souls from your opponent and to defend your monster from danger so that they can collect the souls peacefully. So as we move on, how do we make this multiplayer experience possible? Let's have Patrick talk about Photon.
All right, thank you, Arthur. So the networking engine we use for our main projects will be Photon Fusion. Get it? Fusion? But yeah, so Photon Fusion makes it possible for two Quest headsets to network with each other and create a multiplayer experience. But network games are really hard to debug when creating, especially with Quest devices and headsets. So what we came up is a solution is to make a custom debug panel that's kind of like fixed to your armrest. So in game, we can kind of like see the debug logs, all the error messages in the consoles to see what's going on in debug, and then fix from there. Another big part for our game is co-location. So co-location is basically having multiple different players in the same physical space and then joining the same virtual space and seeing the same virtual asset at the same position. This is done by shared spatial anchors that's provided by Meta, which is used through sharing the point cloud data that you see from one headset and then share it with the other headset. Once they sync with each other, you guys then can see the same virtual object in the same space. But it's really hard for us to set this up at the beginning due to the lack of tutorial and documentation online. So what we did is we found out how to set it up correctly and then come up with the complete documentation that will be released at the end of this project that will be available to both ETC and people inside ETC and outside ETC if they want to develop co-location experiences. Also, another big part is testing and debugging in mixed reality. It's really hard for debugging multiplayer and testing it because every time we need to make a build and deploy it on the headsets. Also, you need to grab a friend or teammate to debug with you. Unless you have multiple heads or hands and wear two headsets at the same time, it's really hard for you to debug. So something we'll come up with is break down the components of our game. We divide the components into mostly single-player parts so we can test and develop and test on our own. And once those parts are good for the iteration, we put them together and test the networking components of it. Now, done with the technical parts of mixed reality, we'll have Chloe to talk more about the art direction.
So with all of these technical challenges that are specific to MR that Patrick have just mentioned about, we also needed some specific art direction catered towards our platform, mixed reality. As you can see, this is one of our assets. Every single one of our assets have hand-painted bounce light onto the bottom of the asset to create a more convincing world and to save performance power in lighting. But also by doing so, it weaves the world of fantasy and our reality a lot closer by making it look more realistic. Another fun art direction that we did was the style transfer of Hanafuda style. To achieve this look, we had two different methods, one being manually painting and outlining the texture in Photoshop, and the other way was to write a shader to outline the objects, so from any angle, each object will be perfectly outlined. Now we'll have Snow to talk about VFX.
Okay, thank you, Chloe. So except for the static art assets, VFX is also playing a very important role in our gameplay because this is the main method to attack in our game. So as you can see here, we have 3 different types of attacked VFX corresponding to 3 different types of monsters. And also, when the attack hitting the virtual and real-world object, it will both collide and generate collection effects. And also, if you notice, if you watch closely, you will find our VFX is also consistent with our art style. So after we integrate all the tech and art stuff into our game, we did several play tests, and we found some problems. So the first problem is about safety risks. So for now, we just place our furniture randomly inside of a room, and some furniture are initially behind our players. So if the players didn't notice the furniture is behind of them, it will cause some dangerous situation. And the second problem is because we are now focusing on finish our core gameplay, so we are now lacking of some onboarding tutorials for players. So we didn't introduce too much about our fantasy world and the strategy to choose monsters. And also sometimes players are confusing with how to interact with their watch and how to use different gestures to trigger attack or defense. And the third problem is about our unbalanced gameplay for now. So for example, we have a player to use defense, shield to defense all the attack in front of them. So it will discourage players to move around the room and also hiding behind furniture. And this is not what we want. So based on those 3 different problems, our goal is to do future iterations. So first, we're going to balance our gameplay and also to design a proper room setup for players to move inside of a room and also in the safety situation, in the safety condition. And the second goal we want to make is to create an intuitive tutorials for players to join our game more smoothly.
Thank you, Snow. With all the feedback in consideration, our team has planned out 3 major milestones by the end of the semester. The first milestone is on week 8. We plan to implement the core PvP comeback gameplay. This includes 2 monster symmetric gameplay with a use of HP and mana to encourage players to move around and potentially interact with the physical objects. Additionally, we'll implement both physical objects that will be placed into environment. This will not only tie with our fantasy, but also has safety considerations. By the end of week 8, we also aim to implement both virtual and physical interactions. This includes, but not limited to, the VFX that will be land on wall will be look different when it land on different surface in mixed reality, as well as explore the possibilities with using the physical watch to send out virtual monster instead of using multiple really complicated hand gestures. The purpose of this milestone is to prepare our team ready before the whole team head to GDC, and it also offers us opportunities to leverage the playable demo to make the trip more meaningful. Our second milestone will be on week 11, and we'll finalize a tutorial as well as a full PvP combat gameplay. This includes a selection of 3 monsters with asymmetric abilities as well as a defined winning conditions. Our team will use this milestone to prepare for playtest day to gather valuable feedback with the full gameplay experience. And our last milestone will be on week 13, and we'll shift our focus more towards documentation and potential iteration based on previous feedback. As a team, we would like to thank to everyone who have contributed to bring this project to the current stage. And for the final iterate, where project's mixed reality deck down, and our deliverable is a 2-player physical combat demo by using mixed reality. Our goal is to create a shared mixed reality demo with meaningful player-to-player, player-to-virtual, and player-to-physical interaction. Thank you, and now we're open to questions.
So you talked about the challenges of a build cycle to, deal with playtesting feedback, building it again, testing a new idea. How long does it take to do a build?
Well, usually for Unity, initial builds takes about 5 minutes when you first launch it towards the end of the day. But then after you just make minor modifications, it usually takes like 2 minutes to make another build. But it's just like the process is annoying of waiting 2 minutes, deploying onto the headsets and testing it out as well. A workaround that is having divided it into single player components so we can test it locally. But so for single players, we don't have to make a build and deploy it onto Quest. We can directly use a link cable connecting to a PC and then test it on your local machine.
I'm a little confused because your battle system, the rock, paper, scissors type format, seems that if 2 players are playing that choice, if I'm water and someone else is grass, I lose because grass is going to beat me all the time. Is the intent that this is going to eventually be 3 players, and that way you have a nice asymmetry with the 3 choices?
Well, first of symmetry, think about types. It's not really like grass will always be water, water will always be fire. It's more of the variety that will come in later. That's like we'll have different types of skills that you can use. So let's say fire maybe will be a bigger range of attack. Maybe grass will be something that's like you can have also another way of attack, just like different ranges of varieties of how to initiate the attack instead of like, like water's always gonna get rid of like be fire of that type.
I played too much Pokemon Go. So I assumed it was done. After the choice of monsters, that's it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But another thing related to like multiplayer that could potentially be a thing, because we adding in multiple players, adding into the same lobby. Either that's like being able to interact with the other players, or being also a spectator to see the mixed reality content in the same space.
Is the goal now to design gameplay experience that would work in a living room, or are you just focused on, you're not worrying about what type of room, you just want to arrange a room custom for this experience and kind of explore that? Which one are you pursuing?
Thank you, Mo. So we were glad that you asked that, because right now the direction that we're heading with in terms of asset generation is that hybrid. We're doing half of them for procedural generation and half of them as labeling specific assets to specific types of furnitures, such as spawn a tree for every chair. So in that sense, it could be played in any room. However, the example that we used in our presentation, the green screen room, it's more of an ideal room setup for current demo and current project to make the assets and everything look in coherent style. But yeah, the general direction is that it can be played in any room.